Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, to the channel IT Simplified. In today's video, I'm here to discuss Copilot for Microsoft 365 and how, as a cloud service provider, you can help your end customer achieve their AI goal. Like always, if you like these sessions, do subscribe to the channel and share the content. Earlier this year, Microsoft has made certain changes to the licensing for Copilot. First of all, you can purchase these licensing through any channel, whether it's through Microsoft Direct, through cloud service provider, or through enterprise agreement. The only thing that you need to consider, there are certain prerequisites that you need to have. You need to have either of the licenses listed on the screen in order to purchase Copilot for Microsoft 365. It can be either business standard, premium, it can be an EMS E3 or E5 suite, or even certain academic licensing. There's no minimum licensing purchase requirement here. The only thing, the number of licensing that you're going to purchase for Copilot for Microsoft 365 should not be more than the prerequisite licensing. So, where as a service provider you can come and help your end customer achieve their AI journey? I think it all starts with advisory services. And I always believe the best way you can communicate the advantages of any product is by utilizing this of your own. And hopefully the customer will understand the vision and the value, and then you can maybe take them to the next step, which is to prepare their environment for artificial intelligence readiness or copilot readiness. And we don't need to start with a full-blown deployment. We can start with a pilot in which an end customer maybe pick a certain subset of users to which these licenses can be enabled. So deployment is also another part where the partner can come and help these end customer. Now, because Copilot for Microsoft 365 is an AI tool, we need to make sure that these end users for which the licenses has been deployed are using it and adopting it. And once they start utilizing and see the benefits, maybe this can be extended to other third-party services like ServiceNow or Salesforce through different plugins and connectors. And that's where also the service providers can help these end customers. Before we get into the architecture, let's start with a brief history of artificial intelligence. And if you don't already know, AI is not a new term. This has been there for the last 7 decades. If I have to define this, it's just a field of computer science in which human beings wants to create machines that can replicate human intelligence in certain extent, also exceed it. The best example of this one can be the chess computers. Now, when these computers were introduced and they were pitted against these grandmaster, these computers were able to predict the opponent's move. And based on this, many times they actually won. That's where this artificial intelligence is coming from. Now, by the late 1950s, there was another term which was introduced, what you call machine learning. And again, if you look at machine learning, it's nothing but a subset of artificial intelligence in which large amount of data is fed to these computers. They can work on these data, they can improve on the data, and then they can make certain decision and make certain prediction based on this data. And if you also introduce deep learning on top of this, which is another segment of machine learning, we can connect different layers of neural network to make better prediction and take decision. And that is where the generative AI is coming from, because we are able to connect different components which may or may not have any relation with each other. And there has been vast adoption of service like ChatGPT. If you remember, when ChatGPT came, it just took 2 months to reach 100 million users. And if you have to compare with some of the other technologies that were there before it, smartphones took 15 years to reach that many users. Internet took 7 years. An application like TikTok or Instagram, you can see on the slide. For TikTok, it took 9 months to reach 100 million users. So you can see that there's a lot of demand for this kind of tool. And that is where the Copilot for Microsoft 365 can come and shine and help these end customers. Now, since you have a better understanding of artificial intelligence, machine learning, let's look into the architecture of Copilot for Microsoft 365. And one of the common term you're going to hear a lot with these generative tool is LLM, or large language model, which is nothing but an artificial program which uses deep learning to summarize and generate and predict context for you. Now, these large language model, if you combine with natural language processing, you're able to interact with these tools in the language that we human being use with each other. Now, if you look in the Copilot from Microsoft 365 context, there are another components such as Microsoft Graph, semantic indexing, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. Now, if you look at Microsoft Graph related to Microsoft 365, is collection of all the data that you have in your tenant. Now, this data can be sitting in your calendar, it can be in your team meeting, SharePoint site, in your mailboxes. Now, what Copilot is doing is it's converting your Microsoft Graph data into large language model. Now, security is also critical in Microsoft Graph. And when I say security, I just want to make sure that if a user is part of certain group, he will have access to only that data to which that group is associated with. So security is going to be critical in Microsoft Graph. But the important thing here is that Microsoft Graph is collection of all the data in your Microsoft 365 tenant, and Copilot is converting your Microsoft Graph data into large language models so that we are able to communicate with it in natural language, the language that we human beings use to interact with each other. Now, another important component within Microsoft Graph is semantic indexing. If Microsoft Graph is collection of all the data, semantic indexing will help you to keep or create a relationship between all these different segments of data. And sometimes there is a question asked, and people they start comparing, because in Microsoft there's also something what you call Microsoft Search, and people they compare Microsoft Search with semantic indexing. Now, if you have to compare this side by side, now in Microsoft Search, if you search for something, let's say for example, I want to know about dogs, and you maybe misspell this, Microsoft Search might not take it. But with semantic indexing, even if you misspell that, it will still be able to analyze it and provide you with the relevant information. Not only that, if I say in Microsoft, in semantic indexing, tell me about dogs, it will also give me information about different breeds of dogs. It will also give me information about the pet food, all the data which is related to the prompt that I've given to the tool. So it's a very important component within Microsoft Graph, semantic indexing, and it's built again on the large language model which we can utilize. Actually, let me show you quickly on the whiteboard. Maybe that will help you understand even better. So let's say this is your Microsoft tenant, Microsoft 365 tenant. In this, you have different segment of data. Maybe I want to use a different color for that. Let me see. Okay. So let me denote this with, let's say this is data 1, data 2. This can be termed as Microsoft Graph. Now, as I said that, what Copilot is doing. Copilot is turning Microsoft Graph into large language model, right? Remember, it's an AI tool which uses deep learning to work with your data and then maybe summarize it and generate text and make and provide you with the useful information. And then let's say I have this end users. Now they are connecting to this via prompts, right? Now they can be in Word, Excel, Teams, PowerPoint, right? They can be in any of these applications. They're going to give prompts, and here we're going to use semantic indexing, because with semantic indexing we're able to make relationship with the data which has maybe nothing to do with each other. That's where Microsoft Graph, semantic indexing, large language model, and natural language, all these things they combine, right? Hopefully this gives you an idea about the architecture behind Copilot for Microsoft 365. Going back to my slide, moving on, Microsoft is not utilizing your data to train its foundational model. We want to make it clear that it's no way used. So your data, which is within your tenant, is your data that remains within that. And Microsoft is not storing any data outside that tenant boundary. However, Microsoft still needs to keep the chat history and the prompts for a certain time. And now that is just to make sure that the tool remains within the conversation to provide you with the relevant information. But other than that, Microsoft is not saving any data related to this tool. Having said that, if you're dealing with any geographical related data residency law, as we know that a lot of people within the European Union, they have to adhere to Journal Data Protection Regulation, also sometimes referred to as GDPR, that will be respected, and any AI data that will be stored within the European Union boundary. So you will be rest assured, because this tool, Copilot for Microsoft 365, is based on responsible AI. It means that it is based on the six pillars, which includes inclusiveness, transparency, reliability, privacy, and security. So you can be rest assured from those points. So when the users interacts with this tool by giving the prompts, grounding of data is done in the Microsoft Graph, and the chat history based on the semantic indexing will analyze that, understand that, and then it will give you the right prompts. That's going to be the flow. But again, as I said, that your data will not be used to train the foundational model of Copilot for Microsoft 365. But if you're dealing, let's say, for example, if you're a company which deals with the financial sector, because this tool always improving, always getting better. So if you are a company which deals with the financial sector, the Copilot for Microsoft 365 will give better results related to the financial sector data versus a company which is dealing with maybe which is in the health field. Their Copilot for Microsoft 365 can give better results related to the health sector. Something to keep in mind. So, what are the three steps which a managed service provider can take in order to help the end customer AI journey? So, you can start with the pre sales, then you can get into the deployment, and then you can follow up with a post sales service. And one of the important tool in order to achieve this is Microsoft 365 Lighthouse. Now, if you have never heard about 365 Lighthouse, it's a free tool, first of all, which allows you to manage multiple tenants from single interface. You don't need to flip between the tenant or provide different logins. From one pane of glass, you'll be able to manage. And actually, I'm going to show you that in a moment. But let's look at the pre-sale services. So, as we mentioned, the number one step when it comes to getting customer ready is to assess their environment and to evaluate their environment. And part of that is to make sure that they have the foundational productivity deployment. It means they should be utilizing the Microsoft 365 application like Exchange, SharePoint. They should be utilizing Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or Teams. And then we need to have proper protection and restrictions in place and proper data structuring. Now, Microsoft believes in zero trust architecture. It means that, first of all, the relevant users should have access to the data that they need in order to work. But at the same time, they should have not only just enough access, but also just in time access. Now, if you're utilizing maybe Entra ID, and a lot of partners they don't know, there's something what you call privilege identity management within the premium licensing. What this allows you to do is that not only you can give access for a certain period of time to the user, but you can also implement the approval process so that before that user is getting access to the relevant information, it goes through the approval process, say for example through a global administrator who can approve it, and then for a certain period of time that user will be able to access that particular information. But that's all part of the Entra ID Premium 1 licensing, if I'm not mistaken. But that's all part of the pre-sale services that you can provide for your end customer. And then you can have the data loss prevention policies in place by tagging, by putting the right restrictions just to make sure that there is no data leakage outside the tenant to the people who should not have access to. And part of this pre-sale services is the optimization assessment. And this involves three steps, as I mentioned. You want to make sure that foundational productivity readiness is there. It means that they should be utilizing the Microsoft 365 application, and their data estate should be ready. It means that it should be protected, secured. The policies should be in place in order to move this journey forward of their AI implementation. Let me show you the optimization assessment and how you can achieve this. Now, this assessment form is an Excel based sheet that you can fill in conjunction with the end customer, which provides you information about their AI readiness. Like I'm on the Copilot for Microsoft 365 baseline, and what you can do is you can see there are certain questions, and then you can put the response here. Like you can ask what is the number of unique users who are utilizing maybe Microsoft Teams for meetings in the environment. You can also ask uh, in your organization if somebody has asked for a generative tool like Copilot for Microsoft 365. Some of these answers are going to be percentage based, right? And some of these answers you can pick from multiple. You can see that there are four options A, B, C, D. You can pick from there. And once you feed this information, it's broken down into three categories like organization profile, about the productivity tools, if they're utilizing, and how the data security looks in their environment. And then it will also identify the blockers in case there is any that you can look, and you can see. And in order to fill this, there is also instruction how to fill this form and how to interpret the score based on the customer response. So you can go through this. And once you fill this form, it also gives you the next steps. So let's say, for example, if they need to improve their data readiness or improve the security, these are all clickable links which are there that you can work with the end customer together, maybe, or even provide that services to improve that particular score. But this Excel based form will give you idea about, right, how the data state looks, and what they can do to improve their AI readiness so that they can move to the next steps. All right, so going back to the presentation. Now, let's look at some of the building blocks. So, we already discussed that there are prerequisites when it comes to licensing in order to implement or use Copilot for Microsoft 365. Another prerequisite is that you need to use the Entra ID as your identity service. Now, this might sound straightforward, but a lot of organizations they're also using federated identities, right? So it has to be Entra ID. Now, if you have on-prem Active Directory, maybe, and then you want to sync it to Entra ID, also formerly known as Azure AD by, let's say, an AD Connect or Entra ID Connect tool, that will work. But your identity service should be Entra ID. Then you need to have the productivity application, which we discussed. So they need to use like apps like Word, Excel, Teams, OneDrive in their environment. And they need to have the server application like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and they need to have proper protection of your data estate in the environment by utilizing maybe Microsoft Purview. But all these are the building blocks when it comes to implementation of Copilot in Microsoft 365 tenant. Now, when you combine uh, proper licensing, you get some additional benefits. So you can obviously collaborate in real time by utilizing video conferencing tool such as Teams. You can use group chats. Now you can enable security and you can give secure access and you can protect identity of users by utilizing features such as multi-factor authentication. Now, if you know that MFA is not a paid tool, you can still enable MFA even if you're utilizing the free version of Entra ID. But if you want to use some advanced features, such as you want to authenticate and you want to double authenticate by utilizing SMS or through an email, then you need to have the premium options within the Entra ID. But the real power of these identity protections come from the fact that when you merge MFA with conditional access, because with conditional access, you can give or restrict access from, let's say, a specific network, specific geographical boundary. All these can be configured via the conditional access. Now, you also have the dynamic grouping. Again, that's part of the premium option of Entra ID. Typically, when you give access to a user, you need to go and manually add them. With dynamic grouping, if it satisfies the parameter, let's say, for example, if there's a user from India, uh, if you have specified in that parameter that that user is from India, you can create a separate group like in an Indian group or maybe an Australian group, and those users will be automatically added into the dynamic group rather than adding them manually. You get uh, access for Azure Virtual Desktop deployment if you have at least the business premium option. So that is another added advantage that you get. And also you have the application proxy. So let's say, for example, if you have an hybrid kind of environment in which you have some internal apps that you have. Typically, when you give users to access internal apps, which is not available publicly, you have to configure maybe firewall rules. You need to configure the VPN or maybe point to site VPN connectivity. With application proxy, you can give access to these applications which are only internal to your users, and give them access via the Entra ID, all by configuring the application proxy, which is again part of the business premium and above license. Then you have defend against cyber threats and data loss, right? With Defender for Business, it helps you to protect the ransomware as well as the malware attack. You can restrict in case somebody is trying to email and forward those emails to a private email, and then there's a company data which is attached to it. You don't want to do this. All that can be prevented by utilizing data loss prevention policies. So that's all part of the cyber threats and data loss policy, which can be configured. And then you can manage all these devices which are enrolled into Intune and part of the mobile device management. You can push the application, you can update them. You can reset the data on that particular machine, all by utilizing Intune device management, which is again utilized by some of the premium option or premium licensing within Microsoft 365. We talked about Lighthouse. So, as I mentioned, that Lighthouse will allow you to manage multiple tenants from one interface rather than flipping between different tenants. And as a managed service provider, I will highly recommend, if you have not utilized this, this will make your life definitely easy. So, let me show you actually how the interaction is going to look. So I am on lighthouse.microsoft.com, as you can see, right? Now, in my case, you don't see any tenant under the tenant tab because I'm not enrolled. I just want to give you an idea here. But once you enroll your end customer via the partner center, you will see the list of all the tenants over here, right? And what this will allow you to do is it allows you to manage the users, the devices, the application, all through one interface. I can assign and remove licensing from here, right? I can configure multi factor authentication. I can also do the self service password reset for the end customer. Now, let's say if you are dealing with a group of users who are into health sector, what you can do is you can create a standard baseline, and based on that the policies that you have configured all will be pushed to those group of users, let's say a group of health sector. And similarly, if you're dealing with something like a group of companies which deals with the financial sector, you can create a separate group of that, and all by utilizing baseline. Similar to that, you can configure the device security, device compliance, you can do the threat management over here. Now, if let's say, for example, if there is a user whose device which has been enrolled into Intune get compromised or it's stolen, you can do a factory reset also of those devices. You can do the complete factory reset, or you can only do the data wipe of the data related to the Microsoft 365 application. So all those things are possible, and as I said, that you can manage everything from here. But if I scroll down, you have, and this is something new which has been added into the Lighthouse, you have something what you call the sales advisor. Now there are two parts to this. One is the opportunities, and the one other one is upcoming renewals. Now with the opportunities, you will see the complete list of all the tenants that you have in your environment, how many seats associated with this, has been there any growth of your end customer in terms of seats and their licensing. You get all the information through the opportunity, and then you can also get information about the upcoming renewal. So if you know that there is a user coming for the renewal and they don't have the minimum requirement to use Copilot for Microsoft 365, I think maybe that's the right time to upgrade them to the higher tier. And let's say, for example, if they're utilizing a business standard licensing and they're coming for renewal, maybe you want to upgrade that to a premium or even EMS suite, which gives you added security, better protection, and more features. So that's another component which is there, which you can use along with managing multiple tenants from one interface. All right, and you can apply granular data access protocol, general data GDAP through Microsoft 365 Lighthouse. It means that you can restrict the users who are going to be part of the security group to manage those tenants, what access they have. Now, moving forward to the deployment services. So we discussed about the AI readiness evaluation. We discussed about the productivity deployment, the application, about how you can protect, secure your data, and then you have the deployment. And I'm going to come to the deployment in a moment. I already explained you about the 365 Lighthouse to manage your multiple customers from one single interface. But there is also a component of post-sales services when it comes to Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now, as I said, that this is a productivity tool that once the licensing has been assigned to the user, we want to make sure that those users are making full use of it. And part of this will involve the adoption and the training. And that's where also, as a partner, you can come and you can help those end users. And not to forget, as I mentioned, that Copilot from Microsoft 365 is evolving. You can use the plugins and you can use the connectors to maybe connect with third-party applications and like Salesforce, ServiceNow, just to name a few. You can also help them in terms of customization and extension of Copilot services to these some third-party application, and then you can manage this on an ongoing basis. I know that there are companies which needs to assess the environment on a regular basis to make sure that they are SOC compliant or any some specific relevant compliance requirement. You can also provide those kind of services on an ongoing basis as part of the post sales services. But let me also show you the user adoption and training that and some of the tools that you can utilize over here. So there are three steps which are involved in terms of driving the Copilot user adoption. You want to help the customer define, right, how Copilot will be used, and you want to obviously train them if they have never used a productivity tool like this or a generative AI tool like this. And then, in order to achieve this, you can use something what you call a Copilot lab, which Microsoft has designed. Right? Let me show you where you can find this service. And just to give you a glimpse of this, this gives you basically what prompts you can utilize in order to interact with the Copilot, maybe in your environment, right? So these are some of the tools that you can utilize, and you can ask the end customer or ask the tool in order to achieve that. So let me just go and flip over. And I am on copilot.cloud.microsoft/prompts, right? And you can see here there is a lot of data, I think, which can be of use. Now you can go through this and you can download the toolkit, the tips and tricks for effective Copilot prompting. I think that's a handy tool that you can definitely utilize. If I go to view more prompts in Copilot Lab, you can see that I can test out certain prompts from here. Now, based on the application, whether it's for any productivity app, I can go and pick this. I can also pick the category, like what I want to do, what kind of prompts I'm looking for, whether I want to create, edit, or ask something. Let's say I want to understand. It gives me example of the prompts that I can utilize and interact with the Copilot service, like extract key information, maybe stay on track, show key slides, or maybe tell me more. Let's say if I click on extract key information, it is asking me summarize the presentation. Now, if I like this prompt, I can always copy this prompt and maybe save it and maybe use it later on. Or I can also maybe share this with some of the other user who might be looking for these kind of help, right? So I get this button from here. If I scroll down, I also get some of the prompts which are similar to like extract key information, like understand, I want to understand quickly, or you want to summarize this doc, right? So all these options are there, which is part of the prompt engineering, which is there in the Copilot Lab. And again, as I said, you can pick and choose related to the specific application, and you can try it out, and you can even share with some of the other customer. Now you also have some of the FAQs here, right, which gives you general information about how prompts, what prompting is, right? What can I get the how I can get the best results by utilizing with co-pilots, right? So all this information, so you can also go through FAQ, and this is all going to be the training. This sounds easier, but as I said, This is a new tool that a lot of people they will need help with, and as an service provider, as a partner, you can definitely come here and help them. And this is a great tool that you can utilize in order to get some sample prompting, and also get some other relevant information that maybe you can share with your end customer. All right. So we now understand we discussed the readiness that you can do the post sale services. We also discussed about the Lighthouse that you can utilize to manage multiple tenants. We looked into some of the post sale services from Copilot Lab. You can tie up with plugins and connectors with third party application. And then you also have the obviously the deployment, right? So you need to deploy these services in customer environment, and that is also part of the engagement. And actually deployment, to be very frank to you, is very easy. There's not much that you need to do, but let me just give you an idea about how the deployment will look from the administrator perspective. So I'm on the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you can see, right? And I'm under the setup button. And this is just a step by step process of provisioning Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'm on the overview button. And this overview button gives you information about what to expect by running this particular interface, right? So you want to prepare your organization for Copilot, right? You want to make sure that they have the proper licensing. So all these part of going to be part of this visit. I can go to the next button, which is readiness. Now at this stage, it's telling me that what are the prerequisites which we all discussed, which is basically talking about make sure that they're utilizing the Microsoft 365, so all the foundational app they have there in their environment. Then moving on, it's talking about the data protection, right? So make sure that your data estate is protected, you have the proper data loss prevention policies, your documents are tagged as private, confidential, or personal, and then you have the proper policies in place so that the user get notified in case they are trying to maybe share some of the information which they should not be sharing outside the boundary. So all these things are part of the data protection. Then you go to the next, and then you are in the rollout process. At this stage, you can go and assign licensing to the user, or you can assign licensing to the group of the user or to the individual user. At this stage, now in my case, obviously I don't have any licensing, so I don't you don't see anything. And as part of this rollout, you can also send email to the people that they are assigned for the licensing, right? So you can also send them the email from here, right? If I pick maybe, I can pick the users from my environment, right? And you can create a sample email that will be sent to these users. Actually, let me just go back. And you can pick users from here, and it's not showing me any preview right now, but typically you will see that you get an email template in which you get a welcome that you've been assigned the Copilot licensing, and you can send that when you're rolling out these licensing in your organization. And then you also get the end user training and resource information here, right? The Copilot adoption, how you can use, so you get a good YouTube video here that you can go through. But these are all part of the additional training and resources that you can share in that particular email when you're rolling out these licensing. And then obviously you talked about the Copilot Lab, and then you can go and next and you can finish and deploy this. So these licenses will be deployed to these end users. And in that email, they will also have the information about where they can get help in order to use the prompt engineering, maybe. They can access Copilot Lab, and but it's pretty straightforward when it comes to deployment. The actual work is the pre-work that you need to do to make sure that they're ready for AI implementation. They're secure, their data is protected. That's the most important part. So with this, it brings us to the end of this session. I know it went a bit long, but I wanted to make sure that in one video I cover everything which is related to Copilot for Microsoft 365. And I hope you found this session useful. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.